This is a redo of my Kitaria's impressions video because after uploading the first one I saw how bad the inbuilt capture footage made the game look like it ran, so instead of having footage that suits perfectly what I talk about, I figured it's better to just record some more now that I have a capture card again. My overall thoughts on the game are pretty mixed, but I don't need to accidentally make the game look worse than it is. I still haven't beaten Kitaria Fables, but with over 15 hours in the game I figured I'd give my thoughts on it. Early on it felt like a chore, but I did get into the groove more later, and ended up playing more than I told myself I had to. When I was offered a code I thought, well, it looks like a budget Rune Factory but with the 2-player option and, well, it kind of is that. Kitaria Fables is a farming simulator and action RPG where you play as Nyan something or other, tasked with keeping a village safe from monsters as they've been aggressive lately. That is similar to an occurrence that happened in the past leading to magic being banned, and doesn't stop us from immediately learning it. There are some noticeable differences from other games of the like that I've played, such as there being no seasons or calendar other than the numbered day you're on being tracked. In one way it's kind of good because you don't have to stress too much about farming, but it does enforce how shallow the experience can be. As there's no animals, livestock, or any upgrades to your farm, it's just entirely a means to fulfill quests, generate income, and create food to heal yourself. Combat and exploration is more of the focus, although you'll be limited in how far you can travel for quite a while. You can fight with a sword or bow as well as magic, and I stuck mostly with the sword, but now with the boss I'm stuck at, I think I'll need to start creating bows. It reminded me a lot of Fantasy Life, or at least what I can remember of that game, as you're in a top-downish perspective and have a basic attack and a dodge roll, but from treasure chests or crafting spells you gain a range of abilities, which you can equip a few at a time. In order to use those abilities, you'll need to whack foes with your basic attack, which will then give you the points to blast giant fire tornadoes. There are no levels in this game, meaning all the grinding you do is solely to craft better equipment, which you'll frequently do in order to stand a chance against most enemies. A big issue I had with combat is that enemies in an area can spawn in different places, which led to really dense populations of monsters that instantly aggro to you and cluster AoEs, and honestly, you're often better off running out and back to see if the enemies spawn in a more preferable manner. Especially since you're often on the hunt for a specific enemy, but might have to clear the entire area just to be safe, by which point some of the others start spawning back. I understand needing items to craft things, but having played before a few post-launch patches, the amount required was extremely excessive and still doesn't seem to be reduced that much, as making a pair of wings required 50 drops, and last I checked it's down to 35. So I spent several in-game days killing bats to make them. In this case they were worth it, but all the items have hefty ingredient and monetary cost. When it comes to crafting food, why do I need to use my crops to make oil rather than just buying oil? Oh, but I have to pay someone to make oil with my corn. And the same for any other food, I can't just craft it at home, I have to pay somebody else to use my ingredients to make the food. Keys are also at an annoying point as you need them to open treasure chests, and you can get them as drops or quest rewards, but in order to craft them you need ores and a lot of materials, which at the start of the game can seem hard to get. Later on you'll be able to find a lot more rocks though. There are loading screens everywhere, which is pretty annoying, but I think before or close to launch it got patched, because it seems a lot quicker than what it once was. Still, there are some areas like why the sage's hut is behind another loading screen instead of loading in with that tiny area, but other than that it's not too bad. One thing they've thankfully fixed is how fast time would go by. The world itself isn't that big, but I wish I could get a mount, or that the majority of teleport points in the world weren't one way only. Like, you're better off dying because you get home faster with next to no consequences. I've also seen, when looking at other people's playthroughs trying to find something, that some quests actually expect you to be past a certain day in the game, which I'll probably reach just because I'm stuck grinding for money to buy the equipment I have all the materials for, but that seems like a big disrespect of time too. Unfortunately, this is not a good game for co-op. There are nice considerations like how they have a separate inventory and menu, even if they don't play for ages their inventory will still stay, but you can't leave to go to the next area unless you're both at the exit. Even if one of you has passed out, playing together does mean that they'll eventually heal and wake up, but then you're just stuck in the zone for a fair while waiting for them to come back and trying to not faint yourself. If you play a 1, their passed out body will keep teleporting to you, but if you play a 2, you're tethered to your partner even if they are passed out, so when you try to avoid enemies you'll end up getting back to them. meaning one of the main selling points of the game and something that got me interested in it is not worth it. The story itself might get interesting, like there's a hint of it, but there's only a particular few characters with any real personality and everyone else is quite basic. As there's no relationship development of any kind outside of basic quest chains, I definitely didn't feel connected or care for anyone. Graphically, it's pretty simple but cute, like it's not flash but none of the textures are off-putting. I did think some of the portrait art for the characters was pretty adorable. None of the music tracks stood out to me that much, but when it comes to these games, sometimes that's better than having something annoy me for hours. While playing the game, I didn't feel the frame rate was too bad, even though it is low, but obviously your flashy attacks do drag it down a lot. Good qualities, I have to say, is that I experienced not that many bugs, which for me as a reviewer feels actually pretty rare. Customizing can be pretty fun as you find certain accessories and abilities that are better for your playstyle, but it was just way too much work. The game itself is also priced at a more fair point considering what you get. It just sort of seems like this game was made without much thought as to what other good games in the farming sim genre had that made them good and worth playing, because without characters you want to know, with really basic farming, all you're left with is decent combat that's stretched out over now slightly less super excessive grinding. They have made it less bad, but it is always a wonder why some games release like that in the first place. Yet I did reach a point where I was starting to feel it with grinding and eventually making actual progress in the story, and I built up my abilities so I could freeze some monsters and blast them away with another big attack, and even run circles around some guys that used to one-shot me until I hit another wall and now I'm back to grinding for money. But because I did get to a point where the game did feel a bit more fun and less like a chore, I do think that I may get back to it and finish it at some point. If you have played and beaten the game, I'd especially love to know what you think overall and in regards to the story. I know that some people did like this a lot more than I have so far, but they may have also played after some of the patches or just have lower expectations. Bye!